Our next guest on the Any Given Run Day podcast is an Irish international runner who came second in the 100k national championships earlier this year, has run a sub 2:30 marathon on numerous occasions, as well as being a multiple time winner of the Longford Marathon. He has a Guinness World Record to his name, which we will absolutely be talking about later in this episode, and runs out of Portmarnock, KC. Matt Collins, welcome to this week's episode of the Any Given Run Day podcast. How are you getting on?
How are you, lads? How's it going? Yeah, getting on great. Just delighted you could squeeze me in amongst all this marathon action. And I suppose, like you said, I have a bit of a marathon experience. So if there's any last minute tips, if I can think of, I'll throw in too.
I have one tip. How do you put up with Jer?
Jeez, it's Jer Copeland.
How do you listen to him?
I always joke that when I get to run with him is the only time he shuts up. So it's the time I get to talk to him. And it's my therapy, because I've been running. I started off with Jer, and he was the fast guy, and he was the intimidating guy. And he was the guy that was too fast, and he's all talk, and he's running, and then eventually I caught him, and then I kind of caught up with him. And then he goes and has a big accident and ruins it all, And then, but nowadays I get to do the talking when we're running, I get to be the one. So that's my time to talk to him. And otherwise, it's just me being being the bridesmaid to him, just being social with everyone else, high fiving everyone and giving his spouting off around everyone else.
We had to start that because he's been texting me all day. He knows you're coming on. I think he can't wait for Monday already. He has the popcorn and all. But Matt, before we get there, you've hinted at obviously what's been, and Sean has hinted at a phenomenal running journey. Where did this all start for you? And it's where we start every podcast episode. Where did Matt start running?
Yeah, okay, lads. Well, I suppose I always think to myself, I sort of started running relatively late. I was sort of 22, 23 when I started, which is relatively late. But then now, when I'm 39 at the minute, so looking back, I'm like, in my head, it's probably quite relevantly new, but actually it's quite a long time ago. And you look around and see all the lads running, all the people running, super fast times now. They're probably not guys that were around when I was around. It's I'm probably moving out of that era, or hanging on by the skin of my teeth anyway. So it was probably my early 20s when I was kind of doing a bit of team sports, and I think at that point I kind of moved on to tag rugby. I was playing, and I was doing tag rugby. That was all the rage 10, 15 years ago, and I was running, and I was trying to do five-a-side as well, trying to keep that going. And the running was just getting better and better. And lads, yourselves, when you start off running, and you're kind of young, and you're mid early 20s, you kind of have your own schedule, your own, you need to do things, you need to get back, you need to get home, maybe you're going to work, you get a chance to go lunchtime, and you just find that the running's just easier. It's easier to fit in, it's easier to get better, and you see progress. And as well, whenever you're playing team sports, what always annoyed me about team sports is you're only as good as the weakest person on the team. So relying on other people is something I started to get a little bit frustrated at. So I think from that point on, I said, you know what, I'll stick to the running. Also, you can run in a straight line, relatively injury-free, quite easily. But once you then do that and then go to five-a-side, you're twisting legs, you're twisting knees, you're waking up 3 days later going, what the hell? I didn't know I used that muscle. And you just getting old. And I was thinking, you know what, the running's going well. I can keep moving. I can control it. I get slowly faster. You start doing 10Ks, half marathons, you build up, you get brave. And it was just chipping away. And really it was that kind of thing where, I like picking a goal. I like going towards it. I like going, that's it. That I'm never running again. Oh, but what about this? And then what about that? And it's just slowly chipping away. And I've been very lucky over the years as well, in that, I was running for a little while. Then I moved to Dublin and joined. I'm originally from Belfast. I moved to Dublin, joined Portmarnock. Had some great coaches there. Moved on up. Picked a few bits and pieces. I'll do the marathon, like you mentioned. I'll go for that Guinness World Record. Things that just keep going, keep you motivated, keep you moving. I've been relatively lucky with injury, and it's just a matter of just slowly improving within life, as well, with everything else going on in life, job, family. I have 2 young kids now, and it's just that one thing that, when you don't need to, rely on other people to get together on a Tuesday night to do five-a-side, and half the people don't turn up, it's that thing you go, well, actually, I'll just go out myself, or I'll go to the gym, or I like getting up super early, and it's just suited me, and you sort of learn. I've learned to love running almost as a side effect of being a runner. Some people you meet, and lads, you must meet them every time you go to a race. Some people are just natural born runners and they cannot get enough of running. And they're going, lads, did you watch the Rotterdam Marathon at the weekend? And you're like,
No.
oh, no, not really. Like I have 2 kids, and United were playing at 1, so I I had to actually get the brownie points to watch that, and and I might watch the odd major if it's on TV and I happen to turn it on, but like running's sort of like I say, a side effect. And with the kids getting a bit older as well, I started to look at maybe junior park runs and things like that, and kind of take a bit of a more supporting role as well as continue my own running. But yeah, that was it. It was more self-development, just self-improvement, and just trying to get better and better. And we all like to see ourselves getting better. And the most important thing as well, which I don't care how fast or how experienced or how amazing you get at running, when you start to run more, and I know a few of the lads are on their 100K weeks now in the marathon training, like you start to develop an eating regime that you need to keep under control. And running is the one way to keep my eating regime under control, because I love I love eating, drinking as well, and by running I can just keep that under control, and that's my lifestyle. And I'm like, what am I going to do if it ever stops?
It's a problem when the marathon stops and you do nothing for a couple of weeks. Well, in my case, when I did nothing a couple of weeks later, I was like, what is this thing going around my waist right now? Because I kept the food going after the spring marathon, and I didn't keep the running going. I was like, oh my God, it catches up fast.
100%.
Matt, when you go back to the days when you obviously transitioning in mid-20s, transitioning, because it's a social time of life. It's when we're going, meeting people, new jobs, new careers. You're into a graduate program here or whatever it is you're trying to do. The tag rugby is obviously something that's very social. It's competitive.
Exactly.
Yeah. Actually, probably one of the more competitive non-contact sports in the world, bar basketball, obviously. But when you decided I'm going running, stepping into a run club, how was that for you? Scary experience? Enjoyable experience? Did you know anyone in it that guided you in, or was it just because moving from Belfast to Dublin and then just saying, okay, we're going into running? How important was that move for you, and how scary was it?
Yeah, absolutely. And by the way, there's absolutely no threat of me getting involved in basketball. Just to let you know, like that's not going to be. Unfortunately, that's not going to be something I'll ever be able to reach. Pun intended. But yeah, like I when I started to do a little bit of running in Belfast, I had a friend up there, Mark Jennings, and he was actually a member of North Belfast Harriers, which are kind of one of these like old school, running clubs that you'll see, pictures, from like the 1950s, and the lads are running like 13-minute 5Ks and like, like cardboard shoes, they're really old school. And it's full of old lads, sitting around the clubhouse still just drinking and talking about their day. So I actually joined him a couple of times at that session, and it was the most intimidating thing ever, and especially as someone that was a social runner, and like I say, just liked to work myself and didn't actually even like talking about running very much. But when I did move to Dublin, and I was like, right, okay, running, I can do running. I'll keep running, and it's a good way to get into Portmarnock. And my wife's from Portmarnock, so I joined, and I thought, I'm at a level where, I know I'm not going to be going on the Tuesday night and be absolutely, mortified because I'm keeping everyone back or slowing everyone down. But like that club in particular, I think I was very lucky as well to join Portmarnock, because at that time, they were very much a marathon running club, and still to some extent they are very much marathon running club. So it's a lot of summer running, a lot of kind of social running, more long runs, which I was more into. So having that connection and joining a really friendly bunch of people was really beneficial. I could totally see, why, especially then 2016, that was when it was really just athletic clubs were the only option. A few of them would have couch to 5Ks, but groups, but really the athletic clubs were the thing. And having those groups would have been quite intimidating for people, especially like me, if you didn't come up through the ranks. If you were, there's. I always think, like, I always see kids now, and they're like 7, 8, 9, 10, and they're out there competing on a Saturday or Sunday out in the cross country, and you just think like that serious character, to be able to do that at that age, like you just about got me into team sports at that age, and it was half just to get out of class, but like just to have that grit, which I didn't, and I tracks were alien to me, and still very much are. I'd still choose a treadmill over a track to do sessions, but it was a tough concept, but once you got going again, it's just nice to have that regime and that routine to join and to get involved in anything. So I coupled that with running and it worked well.
When you look at where you started, anyone who picks up running now instantly knows about pace zones, what a carbohydrate is. Going back 20 years ago, we didn't know much about much when it came to running. We knew it was hard and we knew it was harder. And that was kind of the scale of where my running, and there was no love because there was only two choices, either really hard or harder. So what was it to you in terms of then and your knowledge of being running with friends and then joining a club and adding in structure and giving yourself goals? What metrics were you using to measure off and then what have you seen progress as you have progressed over the last few years?
Yeah, Eric, all right. So I suppose back then, just like you said, like it was just, don't embarrass yourself, get yourself where you can run at a pace for whether it's you doing a 5K or doing a park run, even early days back then, or with the 10K or the half marathon, kind of find yourself a pace and that you can maintain. And if you can, I was picking up little bits of information I could from other people. And like, you'll know yourselves, guys, whenever you're sort of new to it, you're standing there at the start line of, a half marathon or something, you hear someone say something, you're like, oh, that's a good thing. I'll remember that. And it's amazing what kind of sticks from those, pieces of information you get. But like, I might have picked up over the years some sort of tempo run, but it wasn't really until I joined Portmarnock whenever I had someone say, well, this is what we do on a Tuesday. This is what we do on a Thursday. Before that, it was just running. Like, I think that's really important. And like, I actually think a lot of the difference between maybe those runners kind of maybe I suppose like myself who are a bit older and are still going strong, in their late 30s who were running, 10, 15 years ago, just to have that kind of, that big foundation of just miles and miles and miles and miles. It kind of just helps when things get a bit tough. That you kind of have that experience where anyone can have a really good training block and can do really good tempo 5K sessions, and we can all race a 5K and, we could all end up around the same time. But I suppose as well, once you go a bit further and further down the distances, that experience or just that kind of bedrock of really good miles and miles and miles gives you that ability to just know, right, okay, this is going to pass, that whole thing about like tough times pass, tough people stay around. So like that was really that I find that was really useful. Looking back, I'm probably just absolutely aimless going out and doing 5 or 6 miles or whatever a night and just going, I'm not really sure, doing a half marathon 6 weeks later and going, oh, I got faster. But was that just because I've only ran 3 half marathons and I was too afraid the first time or not? Like those kind of early races are really important. And I like, that in my head, running for me has been, there's this, pre-COVID and then there's post-COVID. And like pre-COVID, I suppose kind of lines up with, no carbon fiber. And then post-COVID is like carbon fiber shoes. And so, and like, I think they're great. I mean, I'll use anything and everything that's legal, I'll just state that that's legal. That's absolutely that's going. Like see purists who say, oh no, it's not this, and it's not, you can't be using that, and it's not fair to that. It's like, listen, if someone else standing beside me is going to be using it, I'm going to be using it. And you can adapt to training with carbon fiber shoes, and you can, the way I do it is really just I'll have a relatively new pair for race day, and the other pair will just be for my like faster sessions. And like if you can use a more comfortable pair of Cliftons or Hokas or something like that for your everyday runs, then that's great. And like even having 2 pairs of shoes, I mean, I wasn't doing that for years. I just have 1 pair of shoes until I ran them into the ground, including race day, then another one. Now it's like, now I'm like, hiding receipts from my wife and things, from sales.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
It was on sale. The more I bought, the more I saved, I swear.
Yeah.
That's how it works.
Exactly.
What stage pre-COVID or post-COVID did I want to say love of marathons come into it? Did you do your first marathon before COVID? Because like back in 2016 and stuff like that you're talking about, like you could literally buy a ticket. I don't know, like right up to the Dublin Marathon, but pretty close. Like I know myself and Eric got 2017 one well into, it was after New Year's sometime in January, Eric, wasn't it? We got
it was late on.
Yeah, we're now it's a lottery. So would you do marathons before COVID?
Yeah, so like I suppose my first marathon I think was 2013. It was Dublin in 2013. I think it was. And that was again just that thing where I was, done the 5Ks, 10Ks. And actually, with the friend that I was running with was really into half marathons, so I kind of almost started a half marathon. So about 18 months in, I was like, well, let's just do Dublin and see what the crack is. And you were like back then, I don't even remember what my nutrition was, if it was anything, like it was
Three
it wasn't.
Jaffa and a banana.
Yeah, pretty much, yeah, or whatever's on the course, and I think again, I've just been that kind of person with my relationship is running with, let's see what works. Let's see, what kind of results I get. Let's see what other people think about my results, like, is my 5K super fast or is my marathon more impressive? And I think just doing the marathon, I was just enjoying the longer runs, or again, not really the word is it enjoying. Like, I think I was enjoying the feeling of doing longer runs. My body liked it better. I liked the feeling coming back from a longer run. It was nice to do. I like seeing big high mileage. Like, I love seeing Strava up to high mileages, and I think the marathon time was, and look, as you know as well, it's easier to take a few minutes off a marathon when you're starting off than it is off a 5K, and going flat. I hate flat out running, I would do like one 5K a year, and like, was it the Jingle Bells or something? And I dread it, I'd rather probably run a marathon than try and do that, because it's just not the type of runner I am. So the marathon then just became something, and I always try and do everything. I don't like to shy away. Like, I'll try and do, the Raheny 5 mile, and I'll do all that every year. But the marathon just became something that I think I was just getting better at. And you mentioned 2016 there, like that was the first year I broke sub 3, pretty sure, in the marathon. And like that was, even in the club and all the lads talking about it back then in the club. I mean, like, yourself breaking sub 3 in a marathon, like it's probably still something I'm, most proud of, and I just to do it and how I felt after. And you kind of think, geez, I'm a runner, like I did, and that was the kind of thing. And like, it was actually pre-carbon fiber shoes and all that, but just to do that and go, that itself then spurs you on,
Well, soon after that, then you started working with Gary to go further towards 230. Is that how that started coming about?
That's it, yeah. And like, it wasn't particularly for any real reason other than just to get faster. So it was actually just after the sub 3, really, a few months after. I just said, look, I want a bit of structure here. I want to see what I can, I suppose, get to. And I know Gary O'Hanlon, like, at the time, I think pretty sure that was the year he won the national championships. And I just knew, and his kind of training as well over the years really suited me, because he's sort of a no nonsense type, coach, where he'll give you the sessions, and like, I just like being given the sessions and being told to get on with it, like, I'm not like, I don't want someone phoning me once a week, or I don't even particularly like even on Strava and stuff. I'm like, I'd probably be mortified to think someone's like going through all the stats and going, oh, you did that wrong, or you doing this wrong, or you did that in the wrong, what are you doing that in the Monday or that in the Wednesday? Like, I'll get my plan and be like, right, well, that doesn't actually suit my Tuesday, so I'll move that to a Thursday, and I don't want to do those two beside each other, so I'll move that to a Friday, and I'll do Friday morning or Saturday morning suits my long run, because I want to go have some pints Saturday night. So I'll do that Saturday morning, and then I'll do a longer run, or I'll do a 8 mile on Sunday night then, and it kind of frees that up. So it's fitting it in with your life. And he's that, his kind of plan always supported that. Plus he knows what he's talking about.
What is it about Gary's coaching? Because a good few people, even though I was doing my research on you and stuff like that, and I was looking at your times is getting down to near 230s, I'm just like, Gary Hannon's name's gonna pop up somewhere here in these notes. It didn't take long till I found his name, and there it was. We've had a lot of guests on the podcast who credit him as their coach and getting towards these times. What is it about his coaching?
Honestly, I don't know. And like, it's for me, it's and the best thing, one of the best things about Gary as well. I like just not thinking about stuff. I think I've sort of made that clear, like sort of running in. Like, I'll say to him, Gary, I'm going to do, I'll do the Longford Marathon in August, and then I want to do a fast 5K in September, and then I want to do a half marathon, and then I want to do the Dublin Marathon. And I'll be like, you work that one, right, Gary? And all of a sudden, you get a plan, and like midway through August, you can see like he's sneaking in a 5K session, and while you're training for the Longford Marathon, and then after Longford, he'll go right to the 5K, but he's sneaking in a half marathon session, and then so he's very good at just knowing, like, exactly how to kind of manipulate you into a way of you're ready for a marathon and you're ready to get a 5K PB, and like I say, like, I like the way he just gives me the plan. And I know, I'm sure some people do, absolutely hound them and say, oh, did I do this right and did I do that right, and what should I eat in this day and what should I eat in that day and blah blah blah. But I'm just like, I kind of know by now what I do in that end of things, and I'm just like, Gary, just give me the plan and I'll do it. And it's just having that peace of mind that I just know that it works. So yeah.
I know you mentioned the Longford Marathon, and you've won that twice, or at least twice in my notes. We're going to get to Valencia, the 2:27 and all, but I've been dying to know, so 20 minutes into this podcast, why were you not allowed dress as a postman in the London Marathon?
Yeah.
Tell us this. What, like, I was reading this. This is bananas to me. Erica's lost on this as well. So tell us what's going on here.
Yeah, so look, 2019, 2018, I actually can't remember which one. I thought I wanted to run the London Marathon, and I thought, I can't remember why, I thought I wanted to do it in fancy dress. But my uncle at the time, who was very close to my Uncle John, he was a postman, and he was in the depths of Alzheimer's and dementia at that time, and I just said I want to run it for a cause, and I want to raise money, and a good way to do this is to do a fancy dress. And you know yourself, lad, you're like, what if I do it in a way that I can do it per Guinness World Record? And, like, it's that kind of thing where everyone, wants to do something like that and have a great time doing it and just bundle everything up together.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah.
Yeah. We'll talk. I'll tell you how to work the system. But so I was like, all right, Guinness World Record, and you have to do this application system, and you're like, okay, I want to run as a postman because of my Uncle John. He was a postman, blah 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 blah. Here's the full story. Expecting I'll be like, yeah, whatever. And they got back and said, oh yeah, that's great, but like, are you a postman? And I was like, no. And they're like, well, then you can't run as a postman. Yeah. I was like, all right, okay, right, fine.
I deliver leaflets on a Saturday. So
yeah, I know. Yeah, exactly. And then I was like, no, okay, well, what about I dress up as Postman Pat? Because I wanted to keep it relevant as well,
Yeah.
And they were like, no, that's a different record. That's a fictional cartoon character. You'd fall under then. You wouldn't fall under a postman. And I was like, right, okay. And then it came to the post. I was like, right, what about a post box? And I think I said it, or I think I typed it and emailed it before I'd even thought about like what the hell I was going to do. And then they were like, postbox, right, fine. That's an existing record. You can beat that. But because it's a UK based record, you're going to have to do it as a red postbox. Because I was like, green postbox, Dublin or whatever. And like they were like, no, you can't just pick a postbox. Like, what if
postbox?
Like, what if a Cuban postbox was like, a guy looked like a guy running, and you're like, that's me. I'm a postbox. And by the way, like that was the like. Tell you what, you run a big marathon as fancy dress to raise money, you break a world record, and the amount of people that were still commenting on like, Dublin Live story going, why is this fecker running in red? Like, what's he doing? Like, Brit scumbag. And you're just like, lads, come on. Anyway, but so that was it. They're really strict. Like, so they're on a pretty tight ship over there at Guinness.
There's a great picture of the treadmill and all.
So Irish. Stephen, a red postbox.
I know. Anyway,
I know the article you're talking about. There's they have you the video going towards the finish line. I just see all the normal people running, and there's Matt there in the red postbox thing. I'll have to put it up somewhere on the stories when this episode comes out. It is absolutely brilliant. Was it beforehand, like it said in the article as well, like you'd see other people similar there, fancy dress and all the rest, and oh shit, there's another post box going for my record, or maybe it wasn't that, or was it that kind of thing going on? Like
it was intense. Like, well, first of all, the actual record before me was 3 hours 40 minutes, and like this thing was a big, like hot, like solid, like essentially cylinder above my head, and like you have all these rules. It has to be more than 40 centimeters below the knee and all this, and like so this big thing that was, and it was actually corrugated plastic on the inside. So like, anyway, it was really hot, and you had to go into this big tent before the London Marathon, like just like you see on the TV, these big gazebo tents, and everyone's there, and you're standing there like, and there's some fella dressed as
as ice cream,
and a guy's with a box going, yeah, and then you're looking around,
the pigeon
and then
walks in.
yeah. Sorry, wrong room, and like. And you see, then you see the lads, you'll see two Christmas trees looking at each other from the side of their eyes going, look at this fecker here. And Yeah, like it is surreal, and then then you look around and you go, this is brilliant. I'm the man here, and then you see there was some fella standing beside me, and he was running in ice skates, and he was doing the whole
Oh no.
marathon in ice skates, and I think it took him 6.5 hours. But I was just thinking, that time you put your ice skates on and walk to the ice, and you're
Yeah.
like, feck. So he was running the freaking marathon, so like, yeah, it was it was absolutely, and by the running in it was tough, because you forget about the fact that you're running. Like, I couldn't even reach put gels in, and I had this little box in front of me. I could just see dead ahead of me. So if I had to go and get a water and throw it at me, I was like, sorry, 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 sorry. And that was, and then just things when you're running, you don't think you have to spit every now and then.
Yeah.
So I was just like, I'm just gonna have to just spit in against the side of this costume, so just run along, just spill and just spitting up, going, everyone's going, you're amazing, and you're like, yeah, I'm just literally just covered in spit everywhere, just get this off me. But yeah, no, I did it. I did it in 3 hours 14, so 26 minutes off or whatever the record. So yeah, and I actually checked a few months ago, and it's still there. The record's still there.
I was gonna say, do you watch at the end, start of each year, going, no post box, we're grand, we have the record for another year, move on.
Matt sending in emails. That only looks like 30 centimeters below the knee.
Yeah,
little
yeah.
It's not the right shade of red.
Oh,
that's it.
God. What obviously, how did it feel then? What is the process after you get a world record? What happens? Do you have a ceremony? Does it come in the post? What happens?
You hang around Dunn's all day waiting for the annual to come out to see if you're in it. Yeah, so that's it. You get the email saying you get the photo at the end and all that, and they kind of give you a big thing to hold as if you're going to be able to take it away with you, but then they just take it back, and then they kind of they do a few funny things. One, they add you to this weird Facebook group for just Guinness Book World Record holders, where you think you're going to get a discount or something, but everyone just posts up how many records they have all the time, and with people who've got nothing better to do. And then you get the big certificate in the post downstairs, a big frame certificate, and then you hang it somewhere, where everyone can see it, hang it in the toilet or whatever, so that everyone has to look at it every now and then. And then that's it really. And then you get the book, and luckily, actually, I think it must have been 2018 because it was no, it must have been 2019 because the book came out that year, and I was actually, the photo of me was in the Guinness World Record book, and I was like, right, that's it, I made up, this is brilliant. I've got 100% I made it in the book. And then COVID happened next year, so they had to just basically rehash the same pictures for the next year's Guinness World Record book. So so I was in it again next year. So I love that. But that was it. You just kind of, that's it. You do it. You don't, there's no big check or anything like that. They did actually. They're building a Guinness World Record museum somewhere in London at the minute. You can go and visit, and they actually asked to take the postbox costume about 6 months ago to put in the museum. So I was absolutely relieved to get rid of it, because it's that kind of thing. It's sitting in the attic, and you're like, this is taking up way too much space. So she was like, someone emailed me going, could we take it, and we'll put up a little plaque and a photo and stuff. I was like, I
hope you didn't clean it.
No, no. If you ever want to clone me, that's it. Yeah. If you ever need a DNA sample.
Oh, that is brilliant.
After that, then marathons are done, and yet you're like, I need to get faster again. I've already hit the Guinness Book World Record. So Seville, you're bouncing off. Just looking at my notes here. You got a 22-hour 29-minute in Dublin, and then you went down to Valencia 6 weeks later. I'm jumping ahead of 2023 here.
Yeah.
And then you got another 2 minutes knocked off that. Now we're talking, you said earlier how hard it is. It's easier to get your marathon time fast than it is a 5K. We're at the opposite end of this now, where where are you going to find extra seconds from trying to get faster? Do you feel like you hit something like 2:27? Because what comes from there?
Yeah, I think what happened was I did the sub 3, and then I think I did 2:52 and 2:45, and then I did 2:36 just before COVID in Berlin. And then you sort of, when you get stuck into a marathon rhythm, you bounce from marathon to marathon. And I found for maybe 2 years, I was kind of just going 2:36, 2:33, and then it didn't really move from there for years and years. And I actually decided at the start of 2023, like I decided, you know what, the thing I absolutely fear the most is going and running a fast 5K. So I need to go and run a fast 5K. So in end of 2022, I did the Jingle Bells, and I got like 5 second PB, whatever. Like it was like 16:15 or something like. And I thought, you know what, that was really tough. If I want to run Valencia next year and Dublin and Valencia and do the fast, I'm gonna have to just break this right back, pull this right back, and just learn how to run fast. Because it was the kind of thing, like, and even today, my kind of, when I don't race, or maybe I'm in a bit of an off season, like at the minute, I would just go and run the likes of Longford. But it's almost like a bit of a cop out, because I know I can just go and run it, at a, for me, quite a comfortable pace. So I thought, look, I'm going to have to just go right back and just learn how to run, the Jingle Bells 5K, and then there was the Raheny 5 mile, and then it was the Trim 10 mile, and then it was Bohermeen. And I just knew that in order to become a fast marathoner, I had to go right back to the start and just learn how to run fast at 5Ks, 5 miles, 10 miles. And then that year was the first year for like 3 or 4 years where I PB'd at every distance. I remember in Dunshaughlin, and then and then I did the Dublin half in September. And it's a little funny, it's a little things thinking back. Like I did the Dublin half in September in like, I think it was, I can't remember, it was 113 or 112 high. And actually, about a week later, I got an email from the Dublin Marathon saying, "Oh, just to let you know, you've got a sub elite number for Dublin. Go and collect it in the reception, and then you get to go into the start area." And I just thought, like I was like, "This is unbelievable. I can't, I can't take this easy now. I'm going to have to. I don't want to embarrass myself. I don't like, because I was kind of sort of doing Dublin that year in preparation for Valencia. So I just thought, right, like it was almost like suddenly you get a bit of pressure on you, and you think, I'm going to have to perform here. Like I can't, I don't want to be the guy that starts in the sub elite and then ends up, kind of taking it easy. So the little things like that just where someone puts a bit of pressure on you, and you think, okay, well, I've been having a good year, so I know the goal was Valencia, but let's just give it a go in Dublin. And again, I'm not really someone to jump into big groups, and I suppose there's not too many big groups at that speed, but that pace. But I just jumped in with a little group of 2 or 3, and it just hung on. And then that thing, you slow up, speed down, stop, and I just managed to get it over the line. And I couldn't believe it, to be honest. 2:29. It's I still can't believe it. Yeah.
We had Will on a few weeks ago, and he said there's no better feeling than a PB in Dublin because it's your home one.
Yeah.
Obviously, you have a relationship with the Dublin Marathon. You've done it year on
Yeah.
year, pretty much. It's been a comfortable, and you've used it as a very, well, a milestone in every year. How good was that feeling in comparison to any other marathon?
Yeah, I mean that was, and he's absolutely right. Dublin is great for so many reasons, and like part of the reasons is it's not Seville or Valencia or Berlin, where it's almost a manufactured PB where you can go and say, I'm going to do Berlin, and normally the conditions are perfect, or Valencia and it's flat, and you go and you run a fast time, and it's kind of expected. Dublin can be so up and down. It can be windy, rainy, hot. It's not a perfect course by any means. It's a championship race. You see so many people. The crowds are great. But to get to sort of Clonskeagh and UCD, and to know that you're kind of on pace to get a PB, or on pace to get a decent time or a decent position. Like I think from that point on, you start to sort of believe, and you start to think, all I have to do is hang on and hang on and hang on. And I actually, one thing I say about Dublin every year is Dublin's a really great course, because when you cross the finish line, and I suppose this is maybe the older course rather than the newer course, but you used to have this big long section where you'd have to walk down and around Merrion Square, was it? And like, if you get a PB in a marathon or any race, especially long, you have to spend a little bit of time kind of with yourself when you finish. And if you're really, really, really happy with yourself, that's such a nice feeling to go, I've just done that. I've achieved that. I've spent the last 2.5, 3, 4 hours with myself, entirely in my own head. And like you can be really proud of yourself. And then you see someone from your club, and then you see someone from work or someone like that, and you have this kind of moment. And like, again, you lads know yourself that sometimes you can spend more time in that after section than you can actually running the thing, because everyone's just chatting, and everyone's over the moon. Like, and if you took a step back and watched everyone's face, it's just like, it's such a great day. Like, and it's because you never believe you're going to achieve what you're going to achieve, and then you achieve it, and you just think, well, firstly you think never again, and then you think, right, let's go for pints, and then you start checking your phone and
credit card comes out, and
yeah. Well, not anymore. You don't get that guaranteed entry anymore.
Well, you do the times you're running that, but the rest of us, we're in a different boat.
Find yourself a Jerry Copeland to run with, and you'll be able to get a guaranteed entry. That's another.
I told him when he makes it to the wheelchair, I'll push him around with a group.
Yeah.
But after this 2:20:29, 5 weeks later was Valencia and the 2:27, your PB to date. When you finished Dublin, was it like, okay, I can go a step further Valencia, or was it like I'm done? Like Valencia's just a holiday now, and when did that mindset change?
Well, I actually it was only about 20 miles into Dublin when I said I'd run 20 miles of Dublin fast, and then I kind of take it back. And it was obviously like everyone, famous last words. But I got to the 20-mile point and thought, you know what, I can't keep going, so I will keep going. Got to 2:29, and I was like, I took about a day or two to be over the moon. But when I kind of quickly realized that I didn't have any kind of injuries or overly, tough, stiff muscles or anything, that, look, the goal is Valencia. So while I hadn't actually decided at that point what I was going to do, I thought I'd just keep training, because, you've only got that, really, if you think about it, you've only got it was 5 weeks away, but you only really had 3 weeks of training, because you kind of had a bit of a tapering back up week, 3 weeks of training and then tapering back down. So it was really only in Valencia that I thought, oh, right, okay, look, let's go for this. And really, like, I suppose in my head, it was just making sure I was recovered. And Valencia was obviously just over 2 minutes faster. But look, I think that was because the course was the way it was. There was big groups of fast runners, even at 2:29, 2:28, and it was able to just latch on and just hang in there. And like, belief spawns belief, and confidence spawns confidence. And at that point, you just thought, I have the fitness. And I always say, like, if you go and win, the county championship, or you go and win, the FA Cup final or something, you've achieved something, and you've gone, thank God we did there. Thank God we did that. We got there. But when you finish a marathon, the chances are you're the fittest you've ever been, or you're the fittest you've been in 12 weeks. So immediately you start thinking, oh, do I want to waste this, or can I sneak something else in a few weeks? Or so it would actually take almost more effort to stop and say, I'm going to just leave it and do the park run in 3 weeks. And so it's that kind of, going and going and going, which ultimately I think, is the reason why so many runners just go until they get injured, because that's the only thing that's going to stop them. So yeah, but Valencia was great, I think was your question.
Was it the same feelings crossing, even though you got a PB? Was it the same as getting that PB from Dublin, or was it different?
Like there wasn't as many people around to share it with, for sure. But I was I was proud of myself, and I think, the more and more you run, and the more you become a runner, and especially me, who spends so much time running on my own. Like when I finish, and I know, like I say, I've spent the last 2.5 hours with myself, and I know what I went through to get there, and I crossed the finish line. Well, first things first, you're talking to anyone around you, as long as they speak English, you don't mind talking to people. But at the same time, you're just so buzzing. You're buzzing that you've done it. You're buzzing to get your phone and phone home. You've got half an eye on the fact that you've only got 6 hours of beers before the flight that night. And then, look, it takes the time to sink in, but like the PB feeling never changes, really. It's achieving that thing, and putting most of what yourself into it, and then achieving it is brilliant.
Matt, can I ask, before we jump into the 100K and stuff you've done this year for the Anglo-Celtic Plate and everything else, you talked there before, talking about building the Dublin, about being a faster runner again, going back and needing to do the 5Ks and the 5 mile Raheny, and building. For a lot of people, and I fall into this trap as well, when I finish Dublin Marathon, it's like, what's the next marathon? I'm always thinking, Barcelona Marathon then next spring, and then, the 50K Dundee comes in. It's all these long stuff, and the faster runs, I'm like, I just treat it all the same. Like I need to be longer on the weekend, and that's the same. For you, how does going back to that 5K, how does that change compared to the training for that to build back up? What are you doing different in that 5K run compared to everything else?
Yeah, well, I suppose, you have that sort of that real human response of like, oh, thank God, I've only got to do like, 8 by 400 meters, or 800 meter reps or something like that. So you have that you're happier that the fact that the training volume drops down a little bit. But then you've got that problem that everything is way faster than you're used to. And you do have to be careful, of course. Firstly, you don't go back in too quickly going from marathon running because, when you're in your 30s, especially your 40s or whatever, you're kind of more used to marathon running and you're not used to like absolutely sprinting flat out. That's not something that you're ready to do. So you have to sort of build yourself back up into that kind of that fast running technique as well. You have to get yourself into that position where you're going, right, I actually need to be careful tonight because I can't just go and do 10 miles off the back of getting back from work or whatever. You kind of have to bring in a little bit more of a warm up and maybe do a bit more of strength and conditioning. And I'm not someone that does too much of that, but you kind of have to think a little bit more about that. And overall, you need to just suffer more in the moment, And I'm a big lover of the treadmill. So like I'll go to the gym or in the treadmill, or actually have a treadmill at home. And like I'll just very slowly get myself to the point where I'm running way past what I'm able and just kind of going, right, how long can I hold it for? Can I do 400 meters or 800 meters? And like I say, it's almost a different sport, but it does help in the long run.
It's so hard to hang off a day life with that treadmill.
Yeah.
but I'm glad I've run a lot faster than I am could do that.
A lot of people find it more difficult to, like you mentioned earlier, you prefer the treadmill to the track. What makes that more attractive? Because for me, the track day is nice. You get that little bit of a breeze or whatever it is. The treadmill is you versus the wall and a number and a time. And what is it that you prefer to the track?
Yeah, good question. And I think I think half of it is I think the fact that I like being able to say, I like being able to put a speed on a treadmill and going like I'm finishing this rep whether I fall off the back of this treadmill or whatever happens. Like I don't need to be constantly checking my watch, which I'd be doing on a long run or whatever run. I know that if I hit this, then I'm doing what I need to do. There's also the fact I think that I quite like again, when you're sort of doing longer, more relaxed or more steady runs, I actually like, I like the sensation of like working really hard or like, even sweating or things like that. And you kind of get that on a treadmill. I think you get a bit more of a, that's a kind of, serotonin rush on a treadmill. And I like, and plus actually I heard, a few of the lads talking last week saying about listening to music. I mean, I would listen to music on a treadmill 100%. Like I would be the only time when I'm running that I would put music in. So I kind of I would go, right, okay, I'll look forward to that. I'll find that, really ridiculous, intensive, tune that, that gets me going and gets me through this rep. And I know if I'm doing like 8 by 800 meters or something that, all right, 800 meters, that's like one song because that's about, 3.5 minutes or whatever. So I'm going to get like 10 absolute bangers here and just, have that. And like, it's close as I'd get to feeling, like I'm, absolutely, flying in terms of running. So it's just something different, I think. Like, and the track, you can do that. Like I say, I never grew up running on tracks, or I never sort of did that. So I wouldn't be able to get on a track, and I wouldn't know what to do with myself probably.
That's not a feeling, Matt. From there, then you're talking about going fast, intense, 800 meters, 400 meters. 100 meter sprints. We're going from 100 meters to 100 kilometers. Annual Celtic play.
That's it.
What entices you to go, right, 42K is not enough for me now. I need to somehow maintain speed and go fast. Because it's okay for someone like me to talk about, oh, I love doing 80Ks, equal trails, and all that kind of stuff. But that's a different ball game. Like I'm stuffing my face with all sorts of stuff up in the mountains. And like the food, it's almost not running, and like a marathon can be harder, more taxing on my body than an 80K can be. And that's no disrespect to people doing equal trails or anything like that. That's just my approach to them from where I'm at. But you are trying to maintain these paces at such high levels to go for 100K. Like I think your time was, I think it was something like a 3:30 average pace like that you did this year to come second. Like, what made you want to maintain those paces over such a long distance rather than going, I'm pretty good at this marathon thing, I'm going to stick with that?
Yeah, look, I again, it's funny, you speak to ultra runners, and the like 90% of the group of people out there in Ireland that are doing ultra runners are people that have maybe, they've found some kind of love for ultra running, and they find a love for maybe, I think as well, there's, you meet a lot of ultra runners who, maybe will replace something in their life with ultra running, and they'll kind of get really involved, and they just love being out there, and that's that. I think honestly, why I got into it at the start was I thought, well, I'm better at 10Ks and 5Ks. I'm better at half marathons and 10Ks. I'm better at marathons and half marathons. Wonder what it would be like at like 50Ks and 100Ks. And like, John O'Regan, who is the basically Ireland ultra runner, like, he'd been putting out for years, qualification for the Anglo-Celtic Plate being like, a specific marathon time or a 50K or a 100K time. And I was hitting those marathon times. So like part of me thought, this is a chance to get an Ireland vest, So back in 2019 or 2020, when I first applied and first ran Anglo-Celtic Plate, for me, it was like, apply for it now and worry about it later, worry about how you're going to do it later. So I did that and I got it. And there was, like you accepted it. And I just thought like, this is great. And like I think Sean, you mentioned, was it last week, the week before, sometimes you start a run and you're at a comfortable pace and it's going to get really, really hard, but like, you just run anyway, and then you blow up halfway through and regret it. But I just thought, and I just thought, you know what, I'm going to do that and I'm just going to see how long I can hold on for. And if that's 3-4 hours, then that's fine, right? Let's see if I can go out again. Maybe I'll find a 6-hour race and I'll do that and see how long I can hold on for. And just see, right, what pace to just kind of meet somewhere in the middle where, that kind of running all day meets running a bit faster, and just kind of get them closer and closer and closer together. But you're right, like running 100K, when I first did it, I was like, even when I was, picked to run for Ireland, I was like, Googling, right, when do you stop to eat in these 100K races, and the answer is never. You don't stop, you never ever stop, and you don't eat. You take gels or drinks, like Morton drinks or Tailwind or something. And like, it really is, I think when I started, I was like, oh, brilliant, 100K. It's finally my chance to sort of run a low intensity and just keep going and almost have the crack with everyone. But when you're kind of running at the international level, like the Anglo-Celtic Plate, no, you don't. You run and you move and you just keep going. And it's like, it's still, I'm still not there yet where I found a run where I'm like, actually can go and have crack and, do something where I can stop at these feed stations I hear about and, have a pizza or a beer or something up in the mountains.
You need to start running with me and Sean.
Yeah, pretty much. Yeah.
Complete different ball game, all right. There won't be much of a serotonin rush with that.
You mentioned the green jersey. How addicting is that feeling? Is that going to keep you trying for the longer distances to keep involved in this kind of thing, or?
Yeah, to be honest, like it's funny because, I like, and the thing about the Ireland vest is they keep changing their sponsors. So like they've gone now from Joma to Adidas, and I'm like, I ran in Joma this year. I'm like, I need that Adidas top. Like, I like, part of me is like that'll keep me out of retirement for another year. Because I'm like, that's, first one I had, like, it was the CX Sports or whatever that was, CS Sports, and then it was Joma, and now it's coming in the Adidas, and I'm like, right, that's a reason to keep running because I want to get in. So one day when I stick these in a frame somewhere, I'm like, there you go. It looks, that Adidas one looks great, especially on especially on Charlene and all these other girls, on the track. I'm like, I want that. Absolutely. I want that top. I want to look like that.
To go full circle on this, we talked about how you transitioned from running from team sports, but the Anglo-Celtic Plate, there is a sort of a team element to this. How does that work with? Are you working with other Irish runners? Do you feel like you're working with them, even though your goal is to go for your fastest 100K climb? How does that work for you?
Yeah, you definitely are. And like, in fact, over the years, I've been running with them, and I suppose years ago it was a bit more, when I was running early stages, it was a bit more on your own because it was a bit more amateur. But over the last sort of 3 or 4 years, it's been definitely like 5, 6, 7 runners, especially in the men who've kind of come along, who are, that little bit, maybe, a little bit faster, but a little bit more amateur. So I think a group of us have definitely learned the importance of even running together a little bit more, or, within inside of each other. And like, it was actually this year, when I was running, and there was, I was in third place, and in the Irish, of the Irish team, and then Wayne Waldron actually, just suffered a really unfortunate injury and had to drop out. So then I was in the second place, so I thought, all right, I better really hang on. And then one of the lads I was running with as well, he was behind me and he was doing great. He was hanging in, but then someone dropped out behind him. So it was like, John O'Regan jumped in and said, all right, lads, you're in third place in the Anglo-Celtic Plate, and you better not stop. Whatever you do not stop. So all of a sudden, with 3 laps to go, 5K laps, he just jumps in and goes, whatever you do, you better finish, like prioritize finishing. So all of a sudden you're like, yes, right, okay, it actually is important that we work together here. And it was the male team and the female team finished third, and it was the first time in the male team I had finished on the podium in, I don't know, like must have been 10 years or more. I'm pretty sure. So like that was a great experience too. Yeah, and yeah, it was brilliant.
That's a double win pretty much for you, third with the team,
Yeah.
and then you coming second in the 100k, because there's a national championships as well that one. So that's a weird feeling. Not weird feeling, but the fact you're a team, but there must be
Yeah.
a small bit of like I kind of want to be a top three of like national championships as well.
Of course, yeah, like and like getting a national medal, at any distance at all is unbelievable, and like it's I don't have many of them, so it's really really good to get that, and like it does like of course the Anglo-Celtic plate itself and podium is probably the number one thought in my head, but especially when you're kind of someone was sort of yapping at you the positions and the times and so if you catch him you'll be in this place and you'll make it in, but then again you are obviously thinking, right, okay, I think I'm in second place here, and so there's a good reason to hang on. And yeah, like it is interesting to be in a national championships, especially when it's somewhere else. So like next year it's actually in Ireland, so it'll be great to be running in a national championships actually in Ireland as well.
In the Adidas kit, of course.
Of course, yeah. Fingers crossed.
It sounds like that has your number one focus now. And with that, then, is it just like marathon training, but longer at this stage, trying to hold those paces?
Pretty much. Like honestly, 100k running is really 100k training, especially if you want to do a fast 100k, is really just marathon training. That's with a few longer sessions in it. Like this year, I ran Seville in February, did 2:28 in Seville, and like I knew that doing that going into then, with 6 weeks to go to say the Anglo-Celtic plate, that I was in a really, really good place then, because then I knew I had that through marathon training done. You kind of had those longer weeks because like you can't go and run, it's not like marathon training where, for a 100k race, you have to go up to 80k, every other week or something like that, because you just can't do that. So you just kind of make sure your mileage is up a little bit. I did a 6-hour race. I went out and ran for 4.5 hours one morning, but really that was it. Like I didn't, like that was just sort of, you want to get yourself in a position where you have the kind of the speed and the mileage of just sort of doing a run every day, or a couple of double days, but you can really only fit in one or two like really big ultras, because it's just not good in your body. Yeah.
But before we wrap up the podcast, we have to talk about the Dublin Marathon last year. Yourself, Jared Copeland, going through. We heard his side of the story earlier this year in the podcast about like just trying to go for 3 hour, and then he's finished an incredible 3:06 from everything he's been through. Talk us through from your perspective going through Dublin with Jared.
Yeah, look, what an experience, and it was actually I was actually it was about 4 or 5 weeks before Dublin when I was out running. I like to run at like 5 a.m. I was running along the coast in Portmarnock, and Jerry was actually on a podcast. He was on a different running podcast, which others are available. But anyway,
a lesser one. It's okay. It's
yeah,
okay.
a lesser
we
one. Sure,
understand.
Yeah. And I heard him telling his story, and of course I've known Jerry for years, but I hadn't heard him since the accident. And he was talking about it like, and I actually had to stop. Like I'm not particularly an emotional person, like, but I had to just stop and just listen to him for a second, and a tear in my eye. And there and then, like 5:10 in the morning, I actually just texted him saying, Jer, if there's anything I can do for Dublin, if you need a pacer or someone that can, help you out, let me know. I'll be there, because I had nothing particularly in the diary. And he got back to me then in a couple of days and said, like, yeah, do you want to pace me? And I thought, or, guide me, sorry, not pace me, guide me. I thought, sure, yeah. And then, of course, being Jer and me, life was busy and we didn't even get a chance to go and do a practice run or anything. So thank God thank God we're the same height and kind of look, roughly the same, because whenever you're, guiding each other, whether I'm guiding him that day, like that the height is probably the number one thing that you need to have, because when you consider that you're swinging arms, like my concern was like, right, how can I stay out of his way as much as possible, but obviously guide him. I was learning on the job. Like it was only very quickly that I realized that Dublin has a lot of speed ramps, and when you're running with someone whose vision is getting worse and worse and worse until he goes totally blind, like you're going, oh yeah, how am I going to do this? And I was like, right, okay, right, Jerry, speed bump in 3, 2, 1, up, and then down. okay, right. And I'm like all of a sudden going, right, gel, he needs a gel. Okay, here's a gel. I'm like 3 gels in. I'm like, Jesus, I haven't taken a gel. How am I going to do this? I have a gel somewhere, and I'm like, pretending not to make it sound like I'm struggling because I'm, trying to get a gel in, and then, right, and then like it was just a matter of playing it by ear. We were running. Jar was going through, like, he'd had such an emotional morning that morning with the Lord Mayor's medal and just getting going. The fact that we, of course, the first couple of miles, you're just making sure there was space, and you're running into the Phoenix Park, and it was a big, big effort to just make sure we were really settled and getting into it. And then I started to thought, right, okay, I understand the pressure here on both of us. So we just started to talk, and I was just telling him about old memories I have of him, and then he was telling me memories back about me, and we were just kind of going. And I really had to focus then. And whenever the crowds were disappearing at times, and there was some spots around 14, 15 miles, it was my job to kind of keep him sort of mentally up, as well as physically going. And I was joking, like, because the story was so popular at that time, people were all going, go on, Jer, come on, Jer. And I was like, what about Matt? No one says Matt, feck Jer, and then he'd be like, yeah, feck you, Matt. And then, look, we kept moving. He was going through, going up and down, as everyone does in a marathon. He was going through that times 100. And, that he'd be having his own difficulties where he'd be, he'd start to veer left and right, and I'd be sort of, controlling him, and I'd be learning new problems that might come up and adapting to them. And we just kept going. And like I said before, like his watch was beeping when he was hitting 150 beats per minute, and then we had to bring it back a little bit. And unfortunately, that meant that the 3R pacers group actually caught us. And that was like, you chatted about pacing groups as well before. People who are there to get a PB with a pacing group, they don't care. They're not taking any prisoners.
Yeah.
They're running past us and trying to get in between us and around us. And you're just like, his job is to scream and curse at people if he sees them or if he feels them. My job is to just like, like I'm the guy like driving a car, off a cliff. I'm like, right, I need to just make sure we're safe here. I'm just not going to get emotional. I'm just move over this way, Jared, a little bit, move over that way. Yeah, that way. And like a couple of times there was some close calls where we'd be running and someone in front of you, in like Nutley Lane or something, would just stop dead because they were absolutely wrecked. Like, and you just be like, get out of the way, like, and of course people are like, who's this guy behind me? Shouldn't get out of the way. Like, and of course they don't know you're coming with a guide runner either. So
yeah,
like that was it. They coming to the finish line. It was so emotional, coming to the finish line and the cheers, and the new finish to Dublin is really, I think, really good for crowds and for support. You have such massive numbers around those bends. And then of course we cross the finish line, and there are videos out there where we cross the finish line and I forget that, like, Jared can't really walk. He can run, but
my
like,
job at stop for finish.
He can't really walk. So we have to stop, and I eventually have to, I basically come around, like, pick him up and then walk. And then of course he's on his farewell tour then, he's going around like the Pope waving to everyone. And, Matt, let's talk to this guy. Matt, let's talk to this guy. Let's go. Let's go. Matt, you don't mind bringing me around to Bagot Street, do you? It's 3.5 kilometers away, carrying him around past all the different routes and that. So no, look, it was brilliant. And like the best thing for me was that he did it, that we did it in such a fast time. But then he's just kept going. And like, Jared say himself, people would say, oh, it's great to see you're doing so well, Jared. But like he's got his own battles every day, and he's fighting them. And he's, he was such a good runner before, and it's something that drives him on so much that it, it's nothing's going to stop him. And, we're doing it again this year. So I'm really looking forward to that. And like that's what's keeping me going. That's my focus at the minute. And then after that, maybe I'll pick another marathon and do some painful speed sessions to see where I end up.
Oh, brilliant. I'm just glad that Dublin's not a multiple loop course. Otherwise, I'd have him screaming and effing at me passing a couple of times in Dublin. So, like, he does it Dundee. But yeah, that is fast. Looking forward to seeing both at Dublin Marathon this year. Speaking of Dublin Marathon, I'm not too sure exactly when this one go out, but if it does go out before Dublin, you must be hearing a lot about it over the years. Is there anything that you do hear about that doesn't get enough mention, that you're like, how come no one ever talks about this part of the Dublin Marathon, or something that people get completely wrong?
I think one thing which I've always learned over the years about Dublin Marathon is, like, the first half of it, you say what you want about the hills and the profile, but like the first half of it, you can get quite caught up in it. And by the time you hit half marathon, say 21K or 13 miles, the next approximately 10K is actually pretty quiet and can be quite miserable, and you can get quite caught up in yourself, because not only is it naturally a quieter part of the course, but actually that's the point in your running when you look at your watch and you see 23, 24, 25k, and those k's mean nothing to most people. 15k approaching the half, that's such a big goal for people, and the last 10k is such a big section for people. It's such a big important part, and you reach Milltown and you're downhill and you're kind of going, sometimes even the thought of the hills kind of keeps you going and gets you focused, but that section is actually really, really difficult, and it's probably the most difficult part. So I would say really focus on that middle section and focus on just getting the technique right, just thinking in your head what you're doing, and just keep going and just get to Milltown in one piece. And I find that then they just naturally, I know obviously you have to make sure the nutrition's there as well, but that's where it mentally gets probably the most tough. And actually people don't believe that it can get tough mentally and then not tough, but actually that can happen. So do hang in there.
Yeah, 100% agree. There's times we've talked about before, Eric, we're just like, what happens after halfway? We
No
just
idea.
I don't know this place.
No
It just
idea what happens after Crumlin.
It's just flat. It's uninteresting. Until you get near UCD and Kutsky. Yeah.
That's the toughest part.
Well, Matt, absolutely. Best of luck with that, with Ger once again, and hopefully you get to wear the Adidas kit next year for the Anglo Celtic Plate in 2026 when it's in Ireland.
The pressure's on me now. Like I say, I'm making the pressure on myself, so I'm going to have to do it now.
We'll re-say that. Matt, best luck with you. Definitely we wear the Adidas kit next year. On that note, thank you for listening to this week's episode of the Any Given Monday podcast. So myself, Matt, and Eric, take care.